Hi there. So we will be going over the third-party financing addendum. Let me share my screen. Go. All right. So this is mandatory as of February 2023. This basically outlines the financing that the buyer for the property will be using. There's conventional, Texas vet, FHA, VA, USDA, reverse mortgage, or other financing. So let's go into this section first. If they're doing a conventional loan, 5, 10, 20% down, we would enter it here. This would be the loan amount, not the sales price, the loan amount. For how many years with interest not to exceed whatever percent. So let's say you're being quoted 6%. We want to put maybe 6.25, 6.5 in here because the buyer's not able to lock the rate until they go under contract normally. So if by the time they go under contract, the interest rate has jumped up to like 7%, then they are not required to move forward with the loan. Okay. So we want to add a little bit of a buffer, not something crazy, but something. Now, if it's new construction, they, of course, don't know what the rate's going to be until they're about a month out from closing. If the construction takes 6 months, they can't lock out for 6 months. They can only lock for 30 to 45 days normally. Okay. And it's for how many years? Normally we do 30 years. Of course, here's the full 30 years as well. This basically says it's a 30-year loan and the payments are based on 30 years, okay? And the origination charges cannot be more than certain percent of the loan. And this is put in here to protect buyers from predatory lenders and that say, oh, you know, this is all your fees. They tell them up front and then they get to closing and the fees have jumped up like triple. They can't do that. Okay, this protects them. Now, if they're doing a split type of loan, well, we don't see those a whole lot, but two different kinds to equal the sales price, then we would enter the terms of the second mortgage here. We normally don't see that, okay, but it has all the same elements as this first mortgage. Texas Veteran. Now, Texas Veteran is a VA loan and it's piggyback onto a regular VA loan, okay? But the only difference is that the Texas Land Board, the Texas Veteran Land Board is the one that's giving them the loan, and usually the interest rate's a little bit better. The only time we ever see buyers use this is when the rates are better than a regular VA loan, and that's not always the case, but in the event that there is, then they would use the Texas Veteran Land Board. Now, there is usually an extra fee to use this kind of loan, so make sure that you ask about that. The buyer's using an FHA kind of loan, then we would enter the type of FHA because there's two types that we normally see. It's the regular 203B, and then the one that is for like a rehab, which we don't see a lot because it's gets very messy. You have to use certain types of contractors. You have to submit all the information for the repairs. It gets hairy. And then the interest rate, of course, might be different. So this is the type of FHA loan. This is the actual loan amount. For how many years will it be paid? And the payments are based on how many years? With the interest rate of we want to put a little bit of a buffer in there. And then, of course, loan fees cannot equal more than so much of the percent of the loan. Okay. VA financing, same thing. Loan amount, how many years is the VA loan for? What's the payment based on how many years? And the interest rate and the fees cannot exceed. USDA, same thing. And then reverse mortgage, we rarely deal with those. I'm not a big fan, but this would be how much money you would be borrowing for the reverse mortgage. And other financing, this would be something like seller financing, okay? How much, you know, it breaks down all of the things that it has in here. Loan amount, interest rate, how many years, origination charges, and buyer does or does not waive all rights to terminate the contract under paragraph 2B, okay, which is down here. Now, approval for 2B of this addendum for the loan. Now, this says that time is of the essence. Buyer has to jump on trying to get pre-qualified. And this says that the contract is subject to the buyer getting financing approval. If the buyer, let's say we put in 15 days and on day 14, the buyer hasn't been able to get loan approval. They don't think they're going to be able to get loan approval. They have to do it by the 15th day. If buyer does not terminate this provision, that the contract shall no longer be subject. If the buyer bails, then of course they lose the ability to get their earnest money back. If it is not subject, then we would check this one here. Now, the property also does have to pass approval. So for example, if it's an FHA loan, we get to the property to the point where the appraiser goes out there and the house isn't passed, then the buyer no later than 3 days before closing date may terminate the contract and give the seller notice. Very important that we know from the get-go if we feel like it's going to be an iffy situation, if the house may or may not pass FHA or VA standards. Both entities want to ensure that either the veteran or the first-time home buyer can be in a livable property, okay? And then, of course, if it's an FHA or VA loan, then the house must appraise for at least this amount. If the VA buyer is willing to pay a certain amount in wiggle room, then we would adjust this number accordingly. Of course, if the contract purchase price exceeds the reasonable value of the home, then a 3-day notice of termination has to be given, and it require, let's see, the 3-day notice of termination requirements does not apply to paragraph 4. So if it doesn't appraise, we have to notify, we get to cancel, we get to renegotiate, okay? So the buyer shall have the privilege and option of proceeding with consummation of the contract without regard to the amount of the appraisal value, if it's reasonable. Now, the buyer can still buy the house if they're willing to pay the difference in either situation. But it's just, you know, they don't have to. They have a right to cancel if it doesn't appraise and they haven't made any other agreements, okay? So that's either for FHA or VA. Buyer authorizes buyer's lender to furnish to the seller or buyer or the representations information relating to the status of approval, not specifics like, you know, how much money do they make or what their credit score is. Hey, where are you in the process? That's what they're allowed. You're allowing either party to know about, okay? And seller and buyer authorizes buyer's lender and escrow to disclose and furnish a copy of the closing disclosures, okay? So as agents, we're allowed to see those documents, okay? That's it. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, and I will talk to you soon.